This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Geoff Mosher's here today, everybody. He joins me on a Football at 4 Monday. The Inside the Birds podcast you can check out on all podcasting platforms and, of course, on their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. After every Football at 4 is over, you can get the segment on the Inside the Birds YouTube channel. You can listen to that there. And all this week, we're looking at the draft and everything that's happening around the Eagles and the NFL draft. Adam Kaplan, of course, tomorrow will finish up his mock draft, and we'll get Geoff Mosher's thoughts on some of the stuff that's going on out there today, including, the annual report, Geoff Mosher, that Howie Roseman might want to trade up in the draft. What a novel concept for him, right?
I hear, Mike, and I am still waiting for sources to confirm this. I'm not exactly sure, but I have heard that water is wet. I'm efforting. I am efforting to obtain if that information is accurate, but that is what I've heard, along with that Howie Roseman, who actually said in a press conference, I like to make trades last week, is rumored to like to trade in press conferences.
Right.
In drafts.
Now, the part of the report Adam Schefter mentioned in one of his articles over at ESPN.com that the Eagles are indeed interested in moving up. Now, he did say in there that they are looking, possibly at number 22 if there's a corner that they want. That would sound like it would be accurate, though, right? The corner, if there's somebody there, would they move up to go get a corner in your mind? Because that's a position that they don't generally take in the first round. And it looks like we lost Mosher. We'll try to reconnect with him here on the Sports Bash Football at 4. Yeah, let me, for those of you out there who are wondering what the report was, there was a report today, ESPN.com, that basically, let me bring the exact report up and read it for you. It says, if Roseman wants a cornerback at number 22, as many people around the league believe he could, he might have to move up again. Per sources, he's already been calling around, gauging what a trade up might look like, and that's become an annual tradition. He says, since Roseman has been the GM, they have never drafted a corner, tight end, or running back or safety in round number 1. So Geoff Mosher is back. Let's bring him back and get that answer from him. Yeah, he says, if Roseman wants a corner at 22, as many people around the league believe, he might have to move up again. But they've never drafted a corner under Roseman in the first round. So does that seem like it adds up that they would actually trade up to take a position that they generally don't take in the first round?
Yeah, Mike, I was saying before we got cut off a little bit that if you look back just a couple of years ago, they traded up to get Devontae Smith, the wide receiver. They were also contemplating a trade up that draft to get Patrick Surtain, who's now with the Broncos. So it's not a position that they don't value. Had they taken Surtain, had he been available, and things gone differently, you're talking about a top 10 pick. They know that they have to value it, and in this class, really strong chance that at least 3, if not all 4 of those top-rated corners will be gone by 22. The question I really think, Mike, is which corner do they value the most, and how far up are they willing to go? There's no question that everyone who I've spoken to in the league generally believes that Quinn Toledo is the best cornerback prospect in this draft, and a guy who could go. You start at 8 or 9, where you get the Falcons up there. They're always looking for defensive players. I forget who's right after that. There's just a cluster starting at 8, 9, the Broncos, right? Any team can take Quinyon Mitchell there. The Eagles are at 22. Does Howie want Quinyon Mitchell, whose coach at Toledo, Jason Candle, was a roommate of Nick Sirianni's at connection there.
There's a nugget that we didn't know, right? That the roommate of the player is the coach with Nick Sirianni. So he's probably getting a plethora of information.
Yeah, you'll notice that Quinyon Mitchell, a very clean prospect, has not taken a visit, I believe, to the NovaCare complex. You just haven't heard his name generally associated with the Eagles. But that's mostly because he's a clean prospect and because he's expected to go very high. So the question is, how aggressive does Howie want to be if he's going to move up for a corner? Is he going to go way up to get a Quinyon Mitchell, or is he going to go up maybe just a few spots if there's a Kool-Aid McKinstry or if there's a Terrion Arnold, guys who are kind of projected to go anywhere from I don't know, it could be 14 to 20, 21. Maybe one of them's there at 22. I doubt it. But corner is the position where there's always a run every year. And once that first one goes, you start to see the others follow pretty quickly.
Okay, it's interesting you mentioned Terrion Arnold because the mock draft game over at ESPN today is Jordan Reed's final 7-rounder. He has the Eagles trading up to number 12 to take Terrion Arnold. Would that seem like a reach for you, giving up 22, 50, and 161 to move 10 spots up to take Terrion Arnold out of Alabama?
So you'd have to give up 22, 50. 50 is the second? That's the first of
That's
the second round picks,
first of
right?
the 2 second-round picks. They have 50 and 53 in the second round.
Yeah, you know what? The absence of a third-round pick kind of hamstrings Howie there, but I got to be honest with you. I would not blame Howie Roseman and the Eagles if they traded one of those second-round picks to move that far up to get either Quinyon Mitchell or Terrion Arnold, because those, to me, are the 2 highest-graded corners in the draft. I don't want to call them can't miss, but they're pretty safe prospects from what we understand, and the Eagles have such a glaring need to finally get it right at that position. And let's face it, if they don't, then they have to figure out a way to trade for a corner like they did with Darius Slay, right? Then they're going to have to give up assets anyway. So you might as well give up assets for a guy you're going to have 5 years of control, who's young, who has hopefully his best years ahead of him, than trying to get another 28, 29, 30-year-old guy, right, like Darius Slay, who, by the way, his first year with the Eagles was a waste because 2020 was such a terrible year for the team. So I really wouldn't kill him for doing it.
Yeah, I mean, you're moving up 10 spots. Now, the only reason I was a little surprised because you said Terrion Arnold, and, hey, is he a guy that's going to be around a little deeper in the draft, or do you have to go 10 spots up to get him, I guess? In this mock draft, by the way, they're mock draft, they're for fun, but this is basically things that people hear. Quinyon Mitchell's going 17 to Jacksonville. So that's what my point is. Do you have to move 10 spots up, or can you hang around and wait and move, maybe give up less, but only move up 5 spots?
Yeah, I mean, I'll approach that in 2 ways. One, you've heard it before, but I think it holds true. All it takes is one team.
Yep.
All it takes is one team to really like, or 2 in this case, Mitchell and Terrion Arnold a little bit more than maybe the mock draft you're looking at or what the consensus is, to then all of a sudden you're out of the 2 guys that you may love the most. And then 2 is, from everything I understand, like, it's very likely that Mitchell and Arnold are gone in the top 15 or 16. Like I said, you get that run on these corners. And Mitchell, if he's the best corner, usually the best corner goes somewhere in the top 10 to 12. I would be stunned if he goes 17th as the first, to Jacksonville, you said, as the first corner off the draft, or if the first corner isn't taken in the top 10 to 12. These guys are good. This is not like a weak cornerback class. It's not a deep cornerback class, but it's not a weak one either. In fact, there are going to be some pretty decent corners on day 2. We talked about Max Melton, talked about Andrew Phillips from Kentucky. There are some pretty good corners, so I would be totally stunned if you get to 17 or even 15 and no corners have been drafted yet.
I would agree with that. Geoff Mosher, you guys over at Inside the Birds did your mock draft between Geoff Mosher, who's here on Mondays and Wednesdays, Adam Kaplan, who's here on Tuesdays and Fridays, and, of course, Andrew DeCecco, who will be here on Thursday. You 3 did a mock draft and also have the Eagles taking a corner. Adam Kaplan made the pick of Kool-Aid McKinstry, which is interesting, is that Nate Wiggins was right before, but there's 2 more corners that if you just stick at 22, you don't have to make trades. Is there a big drop-off, do you think, between Mitchell, Arnold, and then the Wiggins-McKinstry duo?
So, again, drop-off is all beauty in the eye of the beholder. The scouting report we've talked to a lot of different people, not just scouts, position coaches, NFL people. Quinyon Mitchell, safest, best prospect. Terrion Arnold, not too far behind. Wiggins, everybody knows about the blistering speed. Everybody knows about the athletic testing. There's always a team. I kind of point to the Raiders, right? If the Raiders wanted a corner, given their history of always drafting the fastest player, wouldn't shock me at all if they took Wiggins, right? And if they wanted a corner because of his speed and that franchise's obsession with it. But what I've been told about Wiggins is that you take a couple of factors in. He's got a very slight frame. I mean, almost Deshaun Jackson, like 170 pounds. So he's not the best tackler in the world. There are some, what I would say, maturity concerns from what I've heard from some NFL people about him. And some don't think it's that much of an issue. And then there's just the health, the overall health and durability. So I do, from what I hear from people I speak with, I do think there's a drop-off between Wiggins and, say, Arnold and Mitchell. And I also think McKinstry probably grades higher as a technician or as a corner, but Nate Wiggins' athletic testing, I mean, he might be the number one corner on some boards, Mike, just because some teams value athletic testing more so than others. So that's why I answer that question with the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but the consensus, the majority of people I speak to would grade Arnold and Mitchell as your top two corners there.
Yeah, and what is your take, Geoff Mosher, on Cooper DeJean? Does he fit? Is he a guy that's, hey, listen, it's fun to talk about him, but he's just not the right guy? Or do you look at totally different, that this is a guy that would be a great fit in this system because his name comes up a lot and he should be available right around that spot?
Yeah, so he's fascinating. I think he's a really good player. And the point that I made on the podcast that we had this morning that you referenced, our mock draft podcast, is if you're drafting Cooper DeJean, first round, second round, top 50, whatever, I think it's really important that you already have a plan for him and know what you want to do with him. And your identity fits with what he brings because he's a very versatile player. If you're a press man coverage team and you're always going to be playing press man, and you need an outside corner, I don't know that that's your guy. If you're a zone team, if you're a team that's in sub packages, if you're a disguise and deception team, you like to move guys around, then Cooper DeJean is probably going to fit your profile. And as long as you see him on the field 65, 70% of the time, then you're probably going to like Cooper DeJean a lot.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are intrigued by maybe the versatility, but sometimes the versatility is a plus or a minus for you. And I don't know, if the Eagles don't view him as a corner, I would imagine they're not going to draft a safety in the first round, right?
Again, what's the plan? What would Vic Fangio do with him? I would make sure with this one that I'm not just relying on my scouting staff, which you should do anyway. You should really blend your personnel staff and your coaching staff. They don't always see eye to eye. But in a case of Cooper DeJean, I think you want to have a lot of conversations and meetings and determine with your coaches and your personnel people, if you draft a player, what would you do with him? And with that plan in mind, does that make him a valuable player, a day two type player, a day three player? You have to have these conversations beforehand.
A lot of good stuff from Geoff Mosher here. And then, you got the other random spots. I want to get a couple thoughts on you. Obviously, his offensive line, Graham Barton, Tyler Guyton. There's a bunch of offensive line, Troy Fatanu. They're all going to be right there. J.C. Latham, I've seen some trade-outs for him. But if those type of guys are there at 22, is that like one of those situations where, hey, they're too good to pass up, we've got to go offensive line? Or is corner such a high priority in their mind that they would go there?
Yeah, so I think that you've just spelled it out. If the Eagles trade up, to me, it's most likely for a corner. If the Eagles are sitting at 22, they're going to have most likely a nice choice of offensive linemen that they're probably going to like because it's such a strong offensive line draft. And as you just said, there will probably be a offensive line prospect there that's just too good to pass up.
Yeah, and you mentioned the offensive line very deep in this draft. It's a good one for that. And I guess the Eagles feel safe. They go line. That's something they like. But the other two spots would be on the edge side, I guess. Chop Robinson, Penn State. Darius Robinson from Missouri. So there'll be a couple of options there. That's what makes this interesting because the areas where the Eagles generally like to take, Jeff, there's going to be some good talent at that spot. Not that there isn't in most years, but in this particular draft, you need offensive line and you need edge, and there's going to be guys that are going to be probably very tempting for them to pass on.
Yeah, so the biggest question mark as far as take or pass, and if he's there or if he's not there, to me, is the UCLA edge rusher, Leitu Latu. He is by far, from what I've been told, the most refined pass rusher, the most seasoned pass rusher, most pro ready to come into the league. People would not be surprised if he came into the league and dominated. He's got that much explosion, great hand usage. But as everyone knows, he had a medical issue. He had a neck injury that made Washington basically say, we're not going to medically clear you to play. That's going to be a red flag for NFL teams, or at least it's going to tell NFL teams they have to do a lot of work and figure out what it is his body is capable of as he goes into the NFL level. He played great at UCLA. So maybe you could say Washington's doctors were wrong, UCLA doctors were right. Who knows? I mean, the doctors are for the NFL are going to examine him, and they're going to figure everything out, and they're going to give feedback to the teams on what they see. And if there's something concerning there that they say, yeah, he's had a great career so far, he's able to play through it, but what about 5-6 years down the road? Then that's obviously going to be discussed. There's no question that if he's cleared, he's going to be coveted by a lot of teams, and the Eagles love him. I know the Eagles love him, but the medicals are a question. That's something that we're working to find out by Thursday's podcast, what his status is with the Eagles.
All right. Check out the Inside the Birds podcast. They have their mock draft out. You go to InsideTheBirds.com. Check out the Inside the Birds podcast on all podcasting platforms. And, of course, their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Tomorrow, Adam will be here. We went through his top 10 of the mock draft. We'll go from 11 to 22 on tomorrow's show. Thursday will be, of course, the draft day. And then Friday, we'll recap it all with Adam here on the Sports Bash Football at 4. Geoff Mosher, everybody, here on a Football at 4 Monday. Thanks, bud.
All right, Mike. Go Sixers, man.